Hello, I'm Farrell from Jane's Addiction. You're watching Heavy Consequence. Here we go!
It has been more than 10 years since the release of the last Jane's Addiction album, which is hard to believe in some respects, but are the wheels turning on a new album from the band? And if so, what you can tell me about the vibe of the music and a possible timeline for new music from Jane's Addiction?
Jane's Addiction, timelines. Well, I know. You never know, you just never know. But what I would love to see, I would love to see us record a couple of tracks this year. Even if it's 2 or 3 tracks. 2 tracks. I don't know. I feel 2 is nice. I think people can take 2, like 2 aspirin.
That sounds well. I think fans will be glad to hear that. 2 songs is better than none, for sure. Yeah. And you played a couple of festival shows last year with Jane's, but it's been more than 4 years since a full-scale Jane's tour. Can fans expect the band to hit the road this year or next year?
Well, we do have ambitions to hit the road this year. So it won't be long before you'll know if those ambitions have come to fruition.
Good. And Jane's are a very interesting band in that there's been a few stops and starts over the years, to say the least. Looking back, do you think Jane's could have functioned as many other bands do, where you release an album every few years, you have a touring cycle, or were those breaks or breakups necessary for the band over the course of the career, maybe from a mental standpoint or physical standpoint for you guys to continue on?
Well, those breaks, as you kindly call them, we never intended on hitting breaks, but it's kind of like driving a car on the freeway, and the next thing you know, the other guy in front of you stops, so you're braking. Things happen to us. We do things to people. We get in trouble. We throw tantrums. But I like to look at it like this, this puts a smile on my face. A great marijuana plant, you always have to top it. Then you get a bushy bud.
Well, I see where you're going with that one, for sure. And one thing about Jane's, which I find very unique among bands, is that nobody sounded like Jane's Addiction before you guys broke on the scene, and nobody has sounded like Jane's Addiction after you guys broke onto the scene. If you know what I mean, you'll always hear, like, there was a lot of bands in the early 2000s where, like, a lot of them sounded like Alice in Chains. A lot of them sounded like Nirvana, Pearl Jam. There was that kind of post-grunge scene. But you can never say that about Jane's. It was such a unique sound. And, your vocals, Dave Navarro's guitars, Eric Avery's bass lines at the time, Stephen Perkins' drumming, there was something very special and unique about each of your playing as well as your singing. And for you, what were those early recording sessions like? And did you sense something magical was happening in the studio when you were with those guys for those first, couple albums and of course that early live album as well?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to be able to tell you from memory because my memory, my memory is pretty bad about being in the studio. I guess it was such an intense experience that my brain almost blocked it out. Isn't that crazy? Kind of like trauma. But what else do you want to know about it?
Yeah, just capturing that unique sound. Like I said, like you're kind of that one band where nobody sounded like you before you and nobody sounded like you after you.
So my comment on that is probably because it's not that easy.
And do you think that has to do with the talent of the individual musicians and just the unique playing of them?
Yeah. Yeah. When I ran into Dave and Steven, these kids were unbelievable players. Like the very first rehearsal with them, I felt that we could be as great as the Who, you know, because the way Steve played and Dave reminded me of Jimmy Page. And I had been through different players. I was very content in Psycom, my first band. I loved it. You know, it was goth punk. You know, I didn't really know where I was going, where I was headed. But then after Psycom, I had to get out of Psycom because it was too dreary. It was too negative. So I wanted to do something wilder. And I'd always loved like the Stones and Zeppelin and the Who. I wanted to move it more that way, which is more of a, like, you know, exciting and positive, not always like, man, I want to kill myself. You can only do that for so long.
Yeah.
You know, have better and better time because you're now fronting a band and, you know, chicks are around.